I did forget to start the recording. It's fine. We just did introductions. But yes, we will now, I guess, start with some housekeeping. So what we would like to request is that you keep your microphone off unless you're speaking or asking a question. Obviously, for our candidates, and I'm sure they're in nice, quiet rooms, so that might not apply quite so much. It's just to keep distractions down. When you're asking a question, please use your name, prefer pronouns if you'd like, and mention your local or regional Green Party. So for me, it would be Melissa Harker, she there, gets a Green Party, for an example. Please remember that this is a safe space. If you have any concerns about any individual, please contact me or Chris via Zoom. And if you're not aware, please take a look at our sort of safe spaces policy and our code of conduct for any sort of context behind that. Here is our Hustings website. We'll be uploading recordings of this Hustings as well as the second part in due course. And we'll obviously, if you're on our mailing list, which most of you probably are, then we'll also let you know via the mailing list. So with that, this is our plan for this evening. We have 1 hour and 40 minutes for the deputy leaders, and then we have a couple breakout rooms. We've got two breakout rooms where we'll have breakout testings, and you can get to pick and choose which one you want to go to and ask questions, and you can change halfway through. So big plan. And all of those, if it take, have sort of indicated that they wish to come along today. Obviously, there may be more. So uh, yeah, so I've already wasted about 3 minutes. Let's get into the deputy leaders. And I guess we can start in alphabetical order for our candidates, as it is on the website, which I believe means that Frank, if you're here, could you start with your opening statement?
Hi everyone, my name's Frank. I'm a councillor in North East Derbyshire. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the Vice Chair of the Environmental Scrutiny Committee here in Derbyshire and part of the Green and Independent group on the council. I ran for Mayor of the East Midlands in 2024, although it feels like a lot longer ago now, and we got one of the best results anywhere in the country during that time. And I've also been a campaign organiser, so working with the party on the field team as an elections expert, helping to get Greens elected across the country, in London, in Bristol, in the West Midlands. I'm really happy to say as well that in these deputy leadership elections, I've been the most nominated candidate for the role and have received the most endorsements so far as well. So feeling really privileged to be able to offer you some good politics, hopefully, and to be able to take the party in a good direction. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I did not expect. Okay. Next we would have had Muffin, sorry. But he's not decided to come along today unless that has changed, in which case please let me know. Which means that the next person that would be doing their opening statement is Thomas Storr.
Melissa, Thomas Dorr only said has had a ward emergency. He's on his way, but might not be in the room at the
I am
moment.
here.
Okay.
Oh, you are?
Oh,
I am here.
cool.
Sorry. Yeah, I joined literally like a minute and a half ago. I do apologize for that delay.
If you would
Um,
want us to wait, we can come back to you
no,
if you want to get prepared or
no, I'm happy to
cool.
go. I mean, we've got to be ready for these kind of things. Anything
Yeah,
happens, doesn't it? So absolutely, I'm ready to go. Yeah,
cool.
my name's Thomas Dorr. I use pronouns he, him. I am the councillor for the Rington ward here in North Somerset. It's just under Bristol in the southwest, and I was the youngest councillor for the last 2 years. I've spent, I've basically dedicated myself to the party, and it is entirely what I want to do for my future is to help other people to basically live better lives. I've kind of growing through this campaign with a pitch of just like a serious, urgent strategy to grow the party, to make us more electable, and really defend like the social justice movement that's going on at the moment, and with the pressures that that's facing from the far right. So yeah, I'm so happy to be able to be here and run this campaign and be a candidate for you all. So thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, so the next candidate would have been Antoinette. However, she could not make it, but she did prepare a 2-minute opening statement just for us to play. So hopefully this works. Let me see. Oh, let's see. Hopefully this should now work.
Hello everyone, my apologies for not making the hustings. Please rest assured that you have my full support. I grew up amongst LGBTQIA plus people, so it is second nature to me to want to support the community. A lot of you, well, not a lot of you, some of you have been DMing me over the last couple of months. So I've been answering some questions. I put a video out. I've also answered the LGBTQIA plus Greens pledges and the Feminist Greens pledges, and I will be attending the Feminist Greens hustings as well. But to clarify, I absolutely support trans rights, and I do believe that the European Court of Human Rights guidance should be withdrawn. Anything that puts people at risk of harm or prejudice or discrimination is not acceptable. I spent part of my 20s being scared to leave the house because I was afraid of how I'd be treated because of the colour of my skin. So I fully understand that kind of fear, and I absolutely do not believe that anyone should have to go through that. If I do manage to become deputy leader, one of the things I really look forward to doing is working with LGBTQIA plus Greens to ensure that members of the community from the Global South get the support they need to not just advance internally, but also externally, because I think it's really important to acknowledge and respect the intersectional prejudice and hatred members of the LGBTQIA plus Greens community from the Global South have and will continue sadly to face. So I want to give them as much support as I can. What else is there? I will be at Black Pride, so I hope to see some of you there. And yeah, reach out if you have any questions. I'm just cycling along because I'm trying to do some like high production value to impress you all. But anyway, again, apologies for not making the hustings, and I hope you will have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.
Cool. Let's yeah, so next candidate will be Alex.
Thank you. I feel like I should be doing mine on a bicycle or a unicycle now, just to keep up with that. So thank you, Chris and Melissa, for putting on these hustings this evening, and thank you all for coming. I'm very impressed with your stamina to do 4 hours of hustings. So please do let me know if you get to the end. So I'm Alex Mace, and I use the pronouns he, him. I am a city councillor and co-leader of the Green Group here in Worcester, as well as vice chair of the Policy and Resources Committee. I'm also the election strategy officer for Worcester Green Party, and in May we delivered the most councillors in Worcester for the county council and won the popular vote for the 3rd year running. I have been a member of the Green Party since the day after the general election in 2015, which you might remember as the Chaos with Ed Miliband election. The particular thing that stood out for me in that election was that the Conservatives were going to freeze child benefit, and Labour's big offer was they wanted to raise it by 1%, which I felt showed a rather poor lack of ambition to deliver real change after 5 years of austerity at that point. I'm proud to be serving on a council that, in our recent Corporate Peer Challenge report, and I might be the only one who mentions one of those, placed a significant emphasis on the importance of equality, diversity and inclusion, and our approach is a clear focus and strength of the council. Now, I'm not here to patronise you by telling that my experiences as a cis white man in a heterosexual marriage are the same as yours. I have had life on easy mode, and I definitely acknowledge that. I am here to listen, empathise and reflect. In my announcement video, I said that I believe trans women are women and trans men are men, and I stand by that. And I also believe that non-binary identities are real and valid. In my day job working with computers, we use the phrase that security is a journey, not a destination. And I'm here this evening, and if I get elected as deputy leader, to take the journey together with you. And I'm here to be your advocate publicly and privately. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Next up is Rachel.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for hosting this. My name is Rachel Millward, pronouns she, her. And I really would love to be the deputy leader of the Green Party because I think this is an absolutely brilliant party with incredible hope-giving policies for people and planet, for communities and nature, and yet almost no one knows that they're ours. And so if we're in this game of politics, we have to prioritize communication, and you need somebody in the leadership team, you need the whole leadership team to be people who can comfortably sit on the BBC, ITV politics show, debate sofas and literally smash every lie that reform brings and deliver a message of hope to every single sofa, because at this time in our history, as we know, hate and division are on the rise, and we absolutely have to stop it dead and turn this around together, which I know this party can do. And I have very much sat on those sofas at the BBC and the ITV and love to do that and love to communicate. But more than that, I know how to embed communication within an organisation. So I currently share the leadership of a district council in rural Sussex. We've done an awful lot with affordable housing, nature restoration, helping people with the cost of living crisis. But I often joke that it's the least sexy thing I've ever done because I used to work in the creative industries, and I founded and ran a women's film festival for a decade called Bird's Eye View, which at the time was quite a sort of funny a funny pun, and it landed back in the 2005, and it helped us really circumvent what could have been a very niche minority earnest feminist event with very small appeal. We made it bold and fun and celebratory. I was raising $250,000 a year. We reached audiences of sort of 10,000 plus across London and beyond. Huge critical acclaim, but most importantly, we got the job done, and we landed and changed the narrative in the film industry and really shifted the understanding of gender equality in film. And so that's sort of, I'd love to bring all that understanding of how to grow movements and how to make sure narratives and messaging and communications gets clearer across the party. And absolutely, I'm a huge supporter of the queer community. It's really, really important to me personally, absolutely, as a parent and as a person in all sorts of different ways. And I'm really, delighted to be here with you all, and very, very supportive, and will always stand up for your rights.
Cool, thanks, Rachel. Next up is Ash.
Hello, can you hear me? Great, cool. Hello, everyone. My name's Ash. I have been in the Green Party since 2010. I've held quite a lot of roles within the Green Party in that time, including, I think most significantly, I was elected twice to be the co-chair of LGBTIQA Greens alongside Ria. I don't want to just repeat my pitch from yesterday's national hustings. You all have access to that and you can all see it. What I want to talk about for a minute is the elephant in the room, which is, for as long as I've been in the party, we have had leaders who say the right words, progressives who will affirm trans men and men, trans women and women, non-binary identities are real and are valid. I don't think that's enough. We have an emerging problem in the party. There is, and I think this is fair to say, a cult of hate in a very small corner of our party, and it is radicalizing members of this party. And I don't think it is enough for us to have leaders who just say the words, who just recite the line. I think we need to have somebody in leadership with real experience of these problems and who has taken the time to sit down with people to try and de-radicalize them. I've been doing this for years. I have de-radicalized quite a lot of people in the party. I have seen how people get led down this path of hate, and I think it's really dangerous. And I think that if we don't have somebody in the room who has experienced this, who can talk about it, it's going to get worse. It hasn't been getting better over the previous years. And It's not gotten better under Carla. It's not gotten better under Zach as deputy leader. It didn't get better under previous leadership teams. It has only gotten worse. So I would really encourage you, when you're electing a leader, think about, is there action behind those words, or are they just reciting the line? Because that is not going to cut it anymore. Thanks.
Thank you, Ash. Next up is Annie.
Hi, hello. I'm Annie Townsend. My pronouns are they, them. I've been a member for over 15 years and I'm a councillor in Bristol. So I'm on my third term as a councillor in Bristol, and I've been a key member of building Bristol Green Party up to the party that it is now. I've got a lot of experience in growing and supporting local parties. When the first time I was a councillor in my first term, I was Green Group leader, and as such, I was the first out trans leader of a political party, certainly in Bristol City Council, and I think in the entire country. I was the coordinator or chair of Bristol Green Party when we gained our largest councillor group in the country, or in England and Wales, and we gained our first MP in Carla. I was also the candidate for Bristol East, where we got our strongest Green vote share that came second. I used to be the ERO, so I used to run this process. I've got a lot of experience of the party as well. In my professional world, I'm a freelance theatre professional. I'm the lead for culture in Bristol as well. And I represent a really diverse inner city ward in Bristol, which has the top 1% of deprivation in the country as well. Personally, I'm working class, I'm disabled, I'm queer and I'm trans, I'm a single parent, and I rent, and my lived experience brings, I think, a huge value to the party and helps me and enables me to bring that representation that we need in the party for more diverse communities and within the party as well. To echo what Ash has just said about the elephant in the room, is that I've demonstrated over my years in the party that I stand up for our community at great personal cost and impact at times, but I've never been afraid to stand up for us. And I will continue to stand up for us in the future. And as deputy, I will be able to do that with even more power and impact. And that's what I would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And last but not least, it is Chas.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, never easy going last, especially after all of those great contributions. And thank you for organising these hustings. I'm Chas Warlow. I'm one of 5 councillors in Richmond upon Thames. I'm deputy leader of the opposition there. I'm a member of a team that has successfully pushed the Lib Dem administration to build more affordable housing, to set harder climate targets and reform its council tax policy. But my roots go a bit deeper than that. I've spent about 2 decades working in renewable energy and community climate action. I worked on a hydropower project. I worked on projects to insulate homes, and I worked on building a neighbourhood forum in the very local area. And I know how much people want to feel seen, resourced, and powerful. So that's the kind of politics I believe in, not just opposition, but transformation. Now, I know that as Greens, we lead with our values, and those values are rooted in care, courage, and inclusion. And right now, LGBTQIA plus people are feeling and facing a hostile environment. So I offer my humanity, solidarity. I want every LGBTQIA plus person to know, if they don't already know it, that they have a home in the Green Party. And we've got brilliant, committed people in our party, and a bit like Alex, I'm here to listen, to find out what the real issues are, and you can count on my support because I've spent the last 20 years or so of my life turning values into action. I want to support our members, empower our activists, and bring our vision into the heart of the national conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chas. What we're going to do going forwards now is we have a list of pre-prepared questions which came from our membership. And me and Chris will take it in turns to ask them. And what we'll also do is we'll try and randomize the order in which people go first and people go last, just to make it a little bit fair for everyone. And it's not as hard on Frank as the guy with the surname starts with A. So yeah, on to the first question, which will be answered by asked by Chris. If this wants to, there we go.
Yeah, so we're going to ask this question for all of the candidates. It's from one of our members, Andrea Granger. She's from Horsham Green Party. They're in Sussex, up in Sussex now. Sorry, since I'm now on the south coast. So, do you think the party is too averse to internal conflict, and is it possible to solve all internal disputes through reasoned debate? So, I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with Rachel on that one.
It's quite hard just doing it straight, but so I am from an argumentative family, and I'm used to healthy conflict. Like, we disagree and we tussle and we talk about stuff, and I think that it, there's very many normal and healthy ways to disagree, and it's important. And I'm also sharing the leadership of a council in alliance, so working cross-party. We don't share all values. We find the ground we have in common, and then we make sure we really deliver for our communities. But even within the party, it's not necessarily the cross-party bit. When you're deciding a policy or something, we have a tussle, we have conflict and disagreement, and then we come together, and then there's a collective decision made, preferably by consensus, but if it has to be a vote, it has to be a vote, and there's a decision made, and then we all get behind it. So I think there's a time and a place, and there are different types of conflict. Well, I'm imagining I'm trying to think what this question's getting at, because there's already been reference to some really toxic and unpleasant type of conflict within this party, and I have got no time for that. I want to be in a party that expects the best of me and of each other, and that can assume the best of all of us, and that involves having deep respect for each other's kind of lived experience. And our reality is it also involves holding a deep respect for collective decision making and collective policy making. So am I answering the question? I think I'm going to expect really strong, really good behavior, absolute respect. I think there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. So I'm going to use an example because I'm imagining that's what you're getting at. If you were going to repeatedly misgender somebody, that's not healthy conflict. That's just insulting. That's just totally unacceptable. So there are different types of thing. But basically, every single political party disagrees with itself. Every single party is a broad church. It is healthy. It is vital. I actually think we grow through that. If I hold one position and I'm in debate, I expect my own opinion to change and grow and to be refined. Else, how do I learn? I'm not fully formed. None of us are fully formed. And I believe in that collective refining of ideas and things like that. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Chas, same question.
Yeah, I don't think the party is too averse to internal conflict. I mean, there's been a whole conflict over trans rights that ended up in a court case, and with someone in the party taking the Green Party to court. I think that's a pretty major conflict, internal conflict. So, and all of the leadership saying, no, we affirm our support for trans people and trans rights. So it seems to me like a pretty major conflict that has already occurred. I don't know if that's what Ash is referring to as a consequence. And is that something that we need to discuss further? Well, if there is further internal conflict, yeah, absolutely. We need to debate and discuss respectfully and understanding the context, sure, of whatever the issues are. It is a bit difficult without having a specific example to talk about this. The second part of the question is it possible to solve all internal disputes through reasoned debate? Well, probably not. No, there will be certain points where, yeah, there is a divergence. And certainly if someone decides to make public statements that are directly contradicting Green Party policy, then that would certainly lead to disciplinary action. So there are edges of disagreement There's a kind of middle ground of disagreement where you can actually debate and discuss, and then there's a kind of extreme where it goes further out. There we go.
Thanks, Chas. Thomas.
Sorry, yes. So I think this comes down to like a national level and a local level. I think that there are some members that probably have parties that aren't very well functioning and don't have the forums to have these kind of debates and talk about policy. But one thing I want to make absolutely clear is that I did law as an A level, is that at points when the the conflict endangers people's lives by going about saying that, you don't exist, that is when as a party we need to be harsh on it, and that is when as a party we need to be tough on it, because we can't have people in the party. We're meant to be an inclusive party. We can't have people in the party turn around and say that endanger people's lives. I think that we do have a good forum for debate, but I don't think that forum, national conference is what I'm talking about. I don't think that forum is big enough. I think that our conferences should be more accessible. I think our conferences, possibly now as we're becoming a bigger party, should be maybe longer at points, or we should have a second forum to be able to have those debates. But yeah, I'm quite happy with what I've seen on a local level about internal conflicts, internal debates. We tend to deal with those quite well in the WhatsApp chats. And we do have a process for dealing with anything that can be seen as more than just internal debate and difference of opinion, but actually kind of endangering people's lives. But yeah, I do just want to be very clear on that, in that if internal conflicts start to undermine people's existence and can endanger their lives, then we should be tough on that.
Thanks, Thomas. Alex, you're next. Same question.
Thank you. So, I think in my experiences of conflict in at least our local party, and we have had some, there's no point denying that. I think sometimes it can be, we can be too averse in that we'll want everyone to agree to either agree to disagree or come to a conclusion and then say, okay, we swept that under the carpet. We won't talk about that anymore. And we've had situations before I became co-leader where those kind of things have happened, and then they've festered for a year, and then the person's left the Green Party, and that can be, I think, a really big problem. So it's not just about if there's a disagreement to discuss it and then say, okay, we finished that. That's then you have to keep checking in to make sure that everyone on each side is happy and that it's been dealt with appropriately, and then we can all move forward together. And we've had situations where people disagree in our local party. We have had a trans candidate in Worcester, and I know that there was one of the campaign managers, I think, was, I'm not going to say transphobic, but it was a bit was not quite as accepting. But in the end, it wasn't a situation that came up. We got on with it and we delivered the campaign really well in the end. And those aren't things that we were having to go and revisit. We were just getting on and doing the work. And if we can all come to an agreement that we're going to get on and concentrate on what's important, then we can all work together on that situation. I think the important thing is that we don't end up in this kind of ruinous empathy situation where there's conflicts going on and people don't address it, and because we don't want to upset anyone, and we have to be honest and say, look, this is going to become a problem. We need to resolve these things. Straight up. But I think in terms of whether you can resolve all internal disputes through reasoned debate, I don't think you can. I always try and address any kind of situation where there is disagreement with empathy, and to think about what people have said and think about whether I could be wrong, and assuming the best of people. But in the end, you can sometimes get to a situation where the other person is either not acting in good faith, or you've taken account of their feelings and you can't reach the viewpoint that they have. And in the end, we're going to have to say, oh, okay, this is not something we can agree on. Either we agree that we're going to put this aside and move forward together, or we're going to have to go to a disciplinary process, or figure out the way that one person can't be involved anymore because we have to move forward and achieve our goals of dealing with the climate emergency.
Thanks. And Frank, next, please.
Thank you. It's an interesting question, and it's good to hear that in this room so far that the rest of the candidates are all wanting to lead with empathy and compassion, and that's one of the things that I love about the Green Party is that mostly we're full of a party of some really lovely people, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about being involved in this movement. But that's not to say we haven't had conflicts, and unfortunately we have, and around some of the issues which matter most to us in the LGBTIQA plus community, and that's been really harmful and distressing for people. And we have to find a way as a party, as a member-led movement, to have these internal debates, which are uncomfortable at times, which are very, very difficult, but to get through them by listening to each other, engaging, challenging each other, accepting that we all need to learn and to grow and to get out of it stronger. And I hope as a party we have been able to do that. I would like to think that we're at a point now as a party where we have strong policy and that we expect that to be led on by our representatives and our leaders and to not be rowed back on. So I think we do have firm boundaries that's set by our members. It's set by a majority of people. Our party does have walls, and we will act within those with people that are in our party are acting in good faith. But those that don't want to contribute positively, I don't think should be part of our movement. But I really like this idea that we can have debate, of this iron sharpens iron, and really get the best policy. And I think that's why, if elected as your deputy leader, find it so easy to be able to go out there in front of the media, because I know that we have such a fantastic policy platform that our members are working so hard to improve day in, day out. And just to say that I think that as leadership, our responsibility isn't to set that policy, it's to represent that policy well. And I want to do that by leading with compassion and by respecting those policy positions and hopefully moving forward with unity. That's something that really matters to me.
Thanks, Frank. Ash, same question.
I don't think the party is too averse to internal conflict. We've been having internal conflict for as long as I've been in the party, which is a good 15 years. One thing that I think is a problem that's emerging is there is a reason why we don't debate fascists, we don't debate Nazis. And the reason for that is they don't want to engage in a liberal democracy. They're not engaging in a debate because they're willing to have their mind changed, or they're trying to change your mind. They're trying to use you to get a platform to radicalize people. They're trying to get away with as much as they can get away with, which would be violence if they could get away with it. It's why we don't debate Nazis, it's why we don't debate fascists, because they're not really engaging in the concept of a debate. I think we have a similar problem in the Green Party, where on trans issues, there are a very tiny minority of people in the party who aren't interested in a debate. They'll try and use it to create a platform, but ultimately, any vote that doesn't go their way was illegitimate. Not enough people voted in it. It didn't count for whatever reason. Then if they lose a vote, they'll just bring it back again, over and over again. Local parties, regional parties, national conference, the same conversations over and over and over again, because they're not interested in knowing whether the party agrees with them. They already know the party doesn't. They just want that platform. They want to berate people. And now we're seeing those same people try and apply financial resources to leverage the outcomes that they want from the party that they can't get democratically. We're seeing lawsuits. We're seeing people bullying leaders into interfering in the disciplinary process. Poor Adrian has been harangued into saying things that he certainly shouldn't have said about the disciplinary process, which has prejudiced the whole thing. We need to understand what is a debate and what is somebody applying these sort of fascist tactics. That's what we need to not allow. We need to focus on the things that are actually meaningful debates where people's minds can be changed, and not allow people to waste our time and bog the party down on everything else.
Thanks, Ash. And Annie.
Thanks. Well, firstly, I wanted to start off by just correcting something that Chas said about one of the court cases, because he said it before, and it's really important that we're factually correct about it. There was a court case, and it wasn't about conflict. It was about removing a spokesperson for not promoting Green Party policy, which is a reasonable expectation that a political spokesperson for a political party speaks a policy and not their own agendas. Now, of that case, there were 20 points. The party won 19 of them. They lost 1 point, which was on a lack of following due process. So we didn't lose a court case. We won it except for one point. And that's really important. And that particular court case did uphold the right of a political party to expect their spokespeople and their representatives to promote and uphold party policy, not their own agendas. So that's really important. It's definitely something for us all to have in mind, not just the people here wanting to be deputies, but everybody else who was hoping to be on GPEx as well. That's the responsibility that we have. But broadly speaking, I agree with what Ash has just said. I'm also very practical as a person. So as a practical thing that I've done is I brought to conference a couple of years ago a motion called a toolkit for healing divisions. Some of the people on this call were co-proposers of that and spoke in favour of it. And that's about creating a toolkit to aid the party to have the understandings and the tools in order to deal with conflict, and also an understanding of what makes us different from each other and have an understanding of each other. And I'm working that toolkit up with GPRC at the moment. But the underlying question here is how do we deal with the conflict that disrespects the human rights of others? That's what this underlying question is. And it is people who disrespect the human rights of trans people. It's people who disrespect our disabled members, disrespect others on the basis of their age, or because of the skin colour that they have or their faith, because it happens a lot in society, but also in our party. Conflict in itself isn't bad, but it's how do we deal with that conflict? We can sense the intention behind that conflict, as Ash has already referenced. We know when somebody's not doing it in good faith, and it's how do we deal with that? How do we deal with people who aren't disrespecting others out of a lack of understanding or empathy, but it's a proactive disrespect, and it's playing out as harmful or abusive. And there's no place in society of people who are abusive or harmful or disrespectful to others in society, and certainly not in a political party. So it is possible to have conflict and discussion and debate, but not when the intent is actually to harm others. And that is a very firm line that we should be holding as a political party and in society.
Thanks very much, Annie. Thanks to everyone for your answers to those questions. If I've missed anyone off the list, please scream. I think I haven't.
I think you've got everyone. Cool.
Excellent. Move on to the next one.
Yeah, so the second question that was asked, this one was by Emma Wolf of Milton Keynes Green Party, she, her pronouns, I should have mentioned. It says, in a Reddit AMA, Ellie Chance stated that she believes that the rights of trans people, excuse me, and cis people come into conflict in areas such as prisons. Are there any circumstances the candidates would put trans women convicted of a crime in a men's prison? Are there any circumstances that they would put a cis woman in a men's prison? If you could put a trans woman but not a cis woman in one, why the discrepancy? I will start with Thomas, sorry.
God, this is quite a long and complicated question, isn't it? I mean, specifically on prisons, my kind of point is that we, as a country, we employ staff to make sure that all of the prisoners are safe in prisons. And if there is crime that is going on within that prison, then that should be dealt with as a crime. I don't think that, someone's gender, what someone describes themselves as, should have any kind of say on that. We are meant to have prison systems that look after and monitor these people to make sure that they are safe from us and themselves. But I don't think that it should come into conflict, and if in any ways, then if it does, then we should be addressing that, because each individual has a right to feel comfortable and to be able to live their lives even if they have committed a crime. At the end of it, we're about rehabilitation, not just locking someone up and throwing away the key. That would be my viewpoint on it. I mean, one of my best friends is non-binary, and I know that sounds like a bit of a tokenism, but the difficulties of kind of going into places and thinking, is there toilets they can use? Is there places that are accessible, and how do you deal with it? It makes their lives so much more complicated, and everyone they're around lives so much more complicated. And I think we just need to kind of go past this point of, you know, is there conflict, and actually go, well, how do we address that conflict, and how do we, as a society, provide for that? That would, yeah. Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Thomas. I will pass to Ash.
Tricky one to answer because I don't really support the prison system as it currently works. We're an over-policed society and prisons are used in a way that they shouldn't be. But I think it would be a cop-out to just say that. So, like, I'm going to assume that this is within the context of the sort of prison system that we currently have, and assuming I don't have the option to change that. I think it's very clear that it should be a case-by-case basis based on the individual person. I don't think there should be a one-size-fits-all rule. Which is kind of what we already have. There are cases where cis women are put in men's prisons if they're convicted of certain types of crimes, but again, there's a case-by-case basis, and the same is true of trans women. I really, really think it has to be a case-by-case basis because it surely depends entirely on the crime. If I was going to go to prison, I'd rather just go to a trans wing, but you're asking me to effectively come up with an answer for a system that I don't like the way it works. So there is no way I can give an answer that I like. But certainly, I think that in the system that we have, it is right that there is a provision to make case-by-case decisions, because I think if you have a one-size-fits-all rule, you are going to harm people. Prisons are extremely complex and have complex care needs. And you therefore have to do case-by-case analysis as a prisoner's care. At the moment, we massively fail in that, and a lot of prisoners go to a lot of harm. But again, within the context of the system we currently have, that is marginally better than creating a one-size-fits-all rule. I certainly don't think that all trans women should be sent to men's prisons, as a lot of, I think, extremely objectionable people seem to advocate for, which I think is the crux of the question. Sorry I couldn't be more specific, but again, I really don't like this system, so I'm trying to stay within the bounds of the question here. Thanks.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Ash. I will pass on to Rachel.
So this is an example of something that I find deeply disturbing and abhorrent, which is when something goes wrong, and humans can be abhorrent, can't they? And one human abuses another, and then the entire community, for some reason, is tarred with that one case. It actually makes me furious. I cannot believe that there's been one case, very specific case of when there was abuse from a trans woman in a prison. That is one person behaving badly. That is not about the trans community and how they would operate. If we think there aren't cases of male on male violence in male prisons, or women on women violence in women's prisons in other ways, we are utterly naive. The prison system literally almost promotes violence. It is. We have a major problem in our criminal justice system. Unfortunately, it's really, really poor conditions, and it's incredibly difficult for mental health. And unfortunately, it kind of almost promotes really difficult behavior. But the idea of taking this one case and extrapolating from that a principle, like, making that a huge narrative of fear, and this is a brilliant example, I think, of where it's been whipped up into a narrative of fear, and is just so often thrown back when you say trans women and women. It's like, but what about prisons? It's talking about one case. So yeah, I basically think, unfortunately, that's part of a hateful narrative. We need to be working on everybody being safe in prisons, all people. I think cis men should feel safe. I think trans men should feel safe. I think cis women should feel safe in whatever prison they're in. And unfortunately, we are a long, long way from that. And that is not the fault of the trans community.
Well, thanks, Rachel. I will pass now to Annie.
Yeah, thanks. Also agree with the really critical need to reform prison and the policing system itself, and the need to not weaponise individual isolated cases. Taking the question on face value, case by case basis, and trans women are already amongst the most vulnerable in society. And prison already has a sliding scale of how prisoners are treated in terms of individually and how they are, what sort of access they have to the rest of the prison population according to the crime that they are convicted for. So there are already all the checks and balances for the cis population as well as the trans population. That's already there. And so weaponising isolated cases helps no one. In the prison population and the criminal justice system already, we need more support for trans women, but cis women too. And I'm also incredibly concerned for the safety of trans men in the prison population, where, you know, because they always get left out of this conversation as well. But more than anything, it's not weaponising isolated cases to attack an entire already marginalised demographic.
Cool, thanks, Annie. I will pass to Chas.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what's been said already. In fact, probably all of it, really. Yes, it's a terrible criminal justice system. Not that I know enough about it. You would expect prison authorities to be able to handle cases on a case-by-case basis in order to protect those vulnerable people and to generally manage the entire system so that it avoids harm. I know that's maybe an idealistic viewpoint, but I would stick to that as a principle. So yeah, certainly dealing with individuals on a case-by-case basis. I know that the question is looking for the logical inconsistency, but I think the answers so far have actually negotiated around that very well. So yeah, perhaps it's the question that's looking for too much of an obvious answer when it's a very, very complex subject, and we need to have, you know, many elements, many aspects and elements in mind when we think about it.
Cool, thanks, Chas. I will pass now to Frank.
Thank you. Really important question, but one that I feel that has been taken hold of by the media and by the far right and almost weaponized against the trans community and turned into this huge conversation that we need to have about a very, very small minority of people and a very small minority of cases. The prison system is definitely broken and needs wider reform, and that's something which we as a Green Party will be working towards anyway. But I think our general approach towards this has to be making prisons safe for everyone that's in there. Nobody should be abused. Nobody should feel unsafe. And so I think that we have to realise that when we are placing trans people in prisons, there are going to be considerations need to be made about healthcare, about their safety, about discrimination that they might face, the risk awareness of that, and make that decision on a case-by-case basis. But what is right for that individual, and trusting that individual to tell us what their gender is and to be able to believe somebody. And that is an important thing here as well, because there's always this feeling of treating other people like what they're doing. I think when we're talking about prisons, is to try and get out of something, to try and I think there's a feeling towards particularly towards trans women, that they're trying to get a nicer, cozier prison sentence rather than actually believing people of what their gender might be. And so I think that the solution to that is better training and awareness for prison officers, greater support for trans people, and just making sure that we have a system which is kinder. And that's what this all comes back to. It's about the prison system as a whole. And we have this really tough crime and punishment system, which I don't think serves anybody. And we need to make something that actually helps people to rehabilitate, to reform, and to not treat people always like they're guilty before they've been proven innocent, always treat people like they are ill-intentioned, and to look at everybody as somebody we care about and try to put their safety first.
Cool, thanks, Frank. And last but not least, it will be Alex.
Thank you. So to directly address the questions, are there any circumstances that candidates would put trans women convicted of a crime in a men's prison? No. Are there any circumstances they would put a cis woman in a men's prison? no. So I don't have a discrepancy, so I don't have to answer the last question, which hopefully is clear. I think I definitely agree with Ash and what other people have said about it has to be on a case by case basis. But I think, as other people have, I think, alluded to, that the essential problem is not just prison reform, but it's 14 years of austerity that means that our prisons are now less safe, less able to rehabilitate people, and less able to stop violence happening between prisoners. And I think that's the core thing, as it's repeated across our whole public services, is that we've had 14 years of cuts, so nothing works correctly now. So even if we agree, on which I do, that we should do these things on a case by case basis based on the crimes committed and the problems that, or the mental health issues and the problems that a particular prisoner faces, I don't think prisons have resources to properly deal with those things. There's way too much in this country that prisons are for punishment rather than reformation of criminals. And they're just there, and they will, in a lot of cases, recidivism, that's a good word to try and get in, is a big problem because people will just commit more crimes because they, in some ways, learn more skills about committing crimes in prison. And I think that's a huge problem. And it also comes in with, it's repeated with court delays that, people will commit abhorrent crimes and not get convicted for years and years at a time. So, that criminal behaviour can go on. And we've also seen it with recent stories about indefinite sentences which have been scrapped, but people who are put in prison under those sentences are still remaining in prison forever and ever. So I think we have a huge problem in our prison system that needs reform, and questions like this, when they come up in the media, are just a distraction to stop us talking about the real issues, which is we need to invest in our public services, prison, and all the other ones.
Cool. Thanks to all of the 7 candidates for answering this question. I will pass over to Chris for the next question, which will come up on the screen just now. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. This is another question from Andrea Granger, she, her, from the Horsham Green Party and a member of LGBTIQA Greens. So do you agree with gender critical people when they say the Supreme Court judgment provided clarity? Or do you agree with trans people when they say it has created confusion and is significantly threatening our rights? So I'm going to start with Frank on that one.
Thank you. I don't see how this judgment could have provided clarity at all when it didn't include the voices of those that it was seeking to provide a judgment on. And I think that is the biggest problem here. The voices of the very, very people that they sought to create clarity about were ignored. And so I think we as the Green Party, with good policy on this, have to continue to campaign for trans rights, for equality, and to make sure that we as legislators, and that's what we are as parliamentarians, push for the rights of trans people and include their voices in these conversations. I don't think it is for the Labour government, as they have done, to be able to pass the buck and to say, oh, well, the Supreme Court have dealt with this and it's out of our hands. I think that is a cop-out. And I think that we as a political party have to continue to push and make sure that we're empowering the voices of those that are actually affected by this to be heard in these conversations.
Thanks, Frank. Same question, Alex.
Thank you. So I think the only clarity that this judgment provided is that we need to update the law. In every other aspect, it's created huge confusion and upset, and makes people feel that they are being erased from our society, which is absolutely not right. I think I've said in previous interviews that I'm not a judge, and if the judges have ruled that the Equality Act 2010, when it refers to sex, means only biological sex, then they're judges and I'm not. But what it tells me is that we do need an updated Equality Act as soon as possible. 2010 doesn't feel like that long ago in my age, but it was a time before equal marriage, and clearly we need to update this law. So we didn't have equal marriage at the time. I think the Equality Act as written doesn't deal with intersex people at all. So we need to develop a new Equality Act developed in consultation with the LGBTIQA community, so that we are properly accounting for these things, and we can move forward from there. But certainly the following thing that gets mixed up with this around the Equality Commission for Human Rights guidance, I mean, that's clearly because the Conservatives have stuffed the board of that body with transphobes. Its guidance wasn't just confusing; it was deeply upsetting and wrong, and they should be withdrawing it and redeveloping something again with the LGBTQIA community.
Thanks, Alex. Annie.
Yeah, well done, Andrea, going straight to the nub of it again. Brilliant question. It won't surprise you, being trans as I am, that I don't agree with the first part of the question, and agree with the second part of the question. The judgment wasn't about creating clarity. It was about removing the rights of trans people and non-binary people. Non-binary people are completely erased in it. Intersex people are completely erased in it. They just don't exist in this Supreme Court judgment. It's about removing our rights, removing our bodily autonomy, which impacts as well, not just trans people, but cis women who don't conform to gender conformity and gender conservative ideas of femininity are also at the sharp end of it. It's about pulling us back to Section 28, which I grew up under, several of us here did, and it's sliding us and taking us to a place that the tax and trans people right now, it's the canary in the mine of removing the rights that we've fought so hard for over decades and decades of feminism, which so many have become a little bit complacent. We feel like rights are something that always move forward and they don't get taken back, they can't be taken back away and removed. But we saw in 1930s Germany how progressive a society they had in Germany and how quickly those rights were removed. We're not in a very different situation now. So we need to stand up vocally, continuously and loudly against the Supreme Court judgment. The Good Law Project have launched a judicial review of it, and they've had some success, particularly on toilets, which is a completely unworkable bill of direction anyway. So there are really good pushbacks already, but as a political party, I was very pleased that this LGBTQI Greens group spoke out very loudly from the off about it, and that the party itself have spoken out against it. And that's something that all of us need to proactively and continuously keep that pressure up.
Thanks, Annie. Ash.
Yeah, quite a lot to talk about. I do not agree with the Supreme Court ruling. Like Annie, I am trans. And I think it's a completely unworkable ruling. As Annie alluded to, it creates a lot of very strange practical problems. For example, a cis woman using a toilet that is nominally assigned as sexed, who gets challenged and accused of being a trans woman, has no way of proving that she's not, which is a very straightforward practical issue, which I actually find quite a useful thought experiment when people ask me to explain a simple, straightforward problem with the ruling. There are many others, a lot of them extremely complicated. I think one of the more dangerous things actually is the wave of misinformation that has come from the gender critical camps since the ruling happened. The ruling is being totally misrepresented to mean far more than it does, which means that service providers are effectively being bullied into adopting extremely harmful trans exclusionary policies. I think that this ruling is the latest chapter in an ongoing cultural genocide against trans people in the UK. And I think it's had a real chilling effect through the whole country. Here in Sheffield, and Annie might have experienced something similar down south, I'm not sure. Right after the ruling, a whole bunch of GPs contacted trans patients and told trans patients they didn't feel comfortable providing hormone replacement therapy that they'd already been prescribed because they didn't feel competent enough to do it. And they all did it with a few paragraphs that looked exactly the same. There was clearly a gender critical campaign to pressure GPs to stop offering trans healthcare, which has nothing to do with the ruling, but it happened directly after the ruling. And that's a part of the chilling effect. I've had trans people come to me to teach them how to self-med off the back of this. It's causing a lot of harm, a lot of risk, a lot of danger. And I think it needs to be revisited, repealed, and I think the law needs to be made clearer because this is not what was intended when the Equality Act was first written.
Thanks, Ash. Rachel.
Yeah. When Keir Starmer said it was really helpful and it really brought clarity. I think we're all in agreement here, aren't we, that it absolutely, it did the opposite and so much worse than that. So it's utterly confusing. I was at Trans Pride with Sean Berry down in Brighton a couple of weeks ago, and she had a badge, and I totally wanted to get one that is just like, I might be trans. And I think that says it all. And I think it's the point that Ash made. It's like, how on earth is this policed? What happens if you don't quite conform? Or even if you do and someone suspects, what are you going to do? Test my chromosomes or look at my genitals? Like, it is really so horrible and vicious. And I totally agree with this idea of the elimination of a group of people and the erasure. And that's happened absolutely from the exclusion of the trans judge who should have been involved in this, and in the trans community, in the all the kind of evidence gathering, etc. So I find it abhorrent and absolutely disturbing and definitely sinister. And I'm so sorry, because I just sort of feel that the depth of pain, it is heartbreaking thinking of the depth of pain of people who've been on this phenomenally sort of brave and brilliant journey, to be told that you cannot actually follow that through in our society. And so, not in my name, absolutely not in my name. I'll stand with the trans community and we'll fight back on this, and absolutely supporting that Good Law project, challenge, and thank God for them. And absolutely proud to be in a party that will fight back when the law is wrong.
Thanks, Rachel. Thomas.
Yes, thank you. So I don't agree with gender criticals. I don't think I probably ever will. Especially when they kind of support what is very obviously bigoted judgments, guidance. I believe very much in Dicey's rule of law, which is that the state, the judiciary, and the enforcement should be separate. And I think recently we've kind of lost that fundamental rule. It's a rule within our constitution as a country that helps guide us to make sure that actually, people are protected and that the state doesn't go further than it should, and that enforcement is individual. And I agree with the trans people, because they have lived experience of this, and we're trying to, I say we, cis people are trying to say that experience, that that your lives are invalid from this society, because you're not born in the body that you should be. We don't get to choose who we are or when we're born. And I think that's to me, the most upsetting thing is that, people that don't actually have lived experiences trying to make judgment calls for people. So, and I say, I'm really glad that Annie brought up Section 28, because while I didn't live through it and I didn't experience it, I can still see the damage that it has done over the last 20, 30, 40 years now. So I'm massively in support of the trans community with this one, and I will do everything I can as an elected official, as the deputy, to not only reverse this judgment, but to go further and go, actually, we need to put more in place to defend people's rights, people's human rights, their livelihoods, everything, because it's quite frankly, I think it's criminal that we can turn around to people and say that you're invalid because someone who earns X amount higher up has this understanding without any lived experience.
Thanks, Thomas. And Chas.
Well, in answer to the two questions, no and yes. So, I mean, I totally get all of the arguments that have been put forward here, and particularly on how unworkable this particular ruling is. And you can see that from, the examples that have already been given. So it's not just trans people that are going to be affected. It's also people who don't conform to cultural stereotypes and gender stereotypes. And it seems like a particular example of maybe something which is difficult for some people, i.e. toilets, has then been blown up into a massive issue which has to be dealt with by law. And I honestly think that the people of the UK feel that strongly about toilets in the way that it's been portrayed. And it's pretty horrible to see the outcome of this particular ruling. And so I totally support the party's position on this, and I totally support trans people in their struggle and essentially being told to sort of get back in the box, and that's never going to work.
Thanks, Chas. That's that question. Thanks to everyone for all your answers on that question. Thanks for being clear and straightforward, and keeping to time as well. Thanks to everyone for keeping their contributions so far, and I'm sure we'll continue. On point and not overly long. So that's always really helpful because it means we can get through more issues. So I'll hand back to Melissa for the next question.
Thank you, Chris. So the next question is from Jimmy in Leeds Green Party, him. And it says, if elected, would you support the ACE community by seeking to declassify asexuality from being a medical disorder and instead add it to the Equality Act and queer identities, bearing in mind that this act is far from perfect? I will start off with Annie.
Yeah, I mean, yes, far from perfect. Could do with work, and I don't know what our own policy is on asexuality actually, and it probably could do with some policy updating ourselves or policy on it if we don't have one at all. Now, personally, I'm demisexual, so there is an overlap with asexuality of my own experience. I also have a very close, dear family member that I don't want to out, who is asexual as well. So, and I support them in that particular journey. And yeah, it's something that is very close to my heart. So yes, whilst I'm not a member of the ACE community myself, it is something that I would support whatever that community would like to see in order to strengthen their own rights. And definitely removing it from being a medical disorder is definitely goes without saying, and whatever additional strengthening that we need to do with that act, definitely count me in. And regardless of what happens in this particular contest, please come and talk to me about it and let me know how I can help to strengthen that with you.
Cool, thanks, Annie. I will pass to Rachel.
I would be interested in listening to and supporting the community. I don't have any problem with that. I'm trying to work out what's behind the question. I can see, presumably, it's been bracketed as medical disorder because some people who are not asexual have periods in their lives with low libido, whatever, and then it's been kind of lumped in with that. And I can see that it's quite a distinct thing, actually. And so it just makes sense to me that it would be a queer identity. I mean, it's one of the letters, isn't it? So yeah, I would absolutely just want to support the community in what felt very important to do. Makes sense.
Cool, thanks, Rachel. I will move to Alex.
So thank you for the question, Jamie. So I think I don't know enough about this to say either way. I assume Jamie is a member of this community, so I'm happy to listen to the suggestion and talk to other members of the community. If this is the right way forward, then absolutely, nobody should be, as is so often the case, in the range of human experience, things that are different to what's considered normal are very often categorized as medical disorders and sought to be treated as if, not being in the normal range is something to be concerned about. So I already said in the previous question as well that I think the Equality Act needs to be replaced at speed. So at least in the short term, yes, I'd be happy to add it to to the list of queer identities if that's useful. But like I said, I think overall the Equality Act itself needs entirely replacing with a new version written with and created with the experiences of LGBTIQA people included in it, so that it properly reflects today's experiences, and we can move forward from there.
Cool, thanks, Alex. I will pass to Frank.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Yeah, absolutely right. That we need to reform the Equality Act, the Gender Recognition Act, and the Marriage Act, and to ensure that there are protections for not just people that are asexual, but the intersex community, non-binary people, and trans youth as well. And we need to constantly, as a party, be pushing and fighting to make sure that our policy is in the best place possible to ensure that we can do this as political representatives.
Cool, thanks, Frank. I will also now pass on to Ash.
Yes, absolutely. I'm an aspec person myself, and I think this is a part of a wider historical problem that we have with the classification of queerness generally as a problem, whether that's legally or medically. It's an ongoing problem. It's been the case for as long as I've been alive and much longer. It is those kind of attitudes that led to things like Section 28, which Annie and I both went to school under Section 28. It was a really bad time, and even though Section 28 was nominally about homosexuality, it was really about all queerness, because that back then, certainly in the eyes of the law, distinctions between different kinds of queerness were not being made. And so something that was an attack on one part of the community is an attack on all of the community, as remains the case. Absolutely, this is something I would support. And I do think it's part of an ongoing sort of generational narrative that is extremely harmful to the queer community.
Cool, thanks, Ash. I will pass on to Chas.
Yeah, thanks again. Yeah, thanks for the question. I've just noticed that in the chat, someone has put in what our current position is, and that it is to expand the Equality Act to include asexuality. Yeah, interesting point about Section 28 and how it's basically was a terrible, terrible idea. Yeah, but to return to the question, well, we want to fight against all forms of discrimination and stigmatization of any form of sexuality. So that is completely in line with what the party stands for, and I completely support that. A tolerant, compassionate society is what we're trying to create. So I'm completely on board with that, but obviously want to listen to people's experiences and find out what they want to do to build the next iteration of Green Party policy and also legislation.
Cool, thanks for that, Chas. And I believe that means the last person is Thomas.
Yes, thank you. So personally, it's your life, isn't it? You get to choose what you want to do. I mean, like, I'm straight at the moment, but there is always people that kind of end up deciding that later on in life they prefer something different. They have awakenings, they have moments where they choose that actually what they're doing at the moment isn't what they want to do. So I think that it is absolutely important that we protect any and all forms of sexuality, because that's like I said, that's your own decision. I think it's insane that we can call it a medical disorder. We can call it, that it's a mental disorder. I would really push that, this is included in the Equalities Act. And I think that our current policy on it, which Katie's put as RR511, probably isn't strong enough. It probably doesn't go far enough. And I think that we need to be very more assertive on our policy on these types of issues. Yeah.
Cool, thanks, Thomas. I think that we can then open it up to a couple of questions from the members of the call. So if you would like to ask a question, feel free to pop it in the chat or feel free to raise your hand and we will call someone.
So Melissa, just while you're doing that, we've had a couple raised in the chat. I did want to draw attention to that. Actually, Tris has just said this. I think we should be quite careful not to call things, not to use words like insane when describing things that we think are ludicrous or ridiculous or beyond the pale. Just to that's that sort of language which we try not to use in those situations. Thanks. So we had a question from Clem in the general chat. Question for all the candidates: what will you do to reach out to and support LGBTIQA plus Greens of colour and ensure that bigotries as a result of intersectionality are properly addressed? So if everyone's heard that one, I haven't got that on display, so I can read it again as I go through, starting with who's not started. Ash.
Oh, there we go. So one thing that I think is within the scope of the deputy leader to do, and which I would do as deputy leader, is a lot of the time deputy leaders do, certainly under Zach's model, is traveling around the country campaigning for people. And one thing that I think I would like to do as deputy leader is, rather than doing flying visits, I want to actually stay in one location and campaign, ideally for a whole day or multiple days on campaigns. And what I would like to do is prioritize campaigns that have candidates that are underrepresented. That is LGBTIQA plus Greens of colour, but also disabled people, anyone that we are not adequately representing. Those are the people I would prioritize with my time as deputy leader. I wouldn't engage with any campaign that I didn't think was making adequate accessibility available to their local activists, and I would try to do my best to uplift those people that we're not hearing from enough as potential councillor candidates and going up to the general election. If I was deputy leader that long, going up to a general election or a by-election. I think that's a really practical thing that deputy leader can do. And I think it's something that ideally whoever wins should do. But certainly that is my plan for making sure that we're actually making a practical step up change in how we represent people more generally in the party. My time is prioritised for those who are less represented within the party generally.
Thanks, Ash. Next I will go with Thomas. So the question, Thomas, is what will you do to reach out and support LGBTIQA plus Greens of colour and assure that bigotries as a result of intersectionality are properly addressed?
Yeah, so to deal with a properly addressed bit, I think that our discipline system within the party at the moment, I don't think it has enough resources. I don't think it has enough people that sit on it, and I don't think it works fast enough. That's the first bit. And the second bit about how coming along and helping people. Well, I've spent the last 2 years as the elections coordinator for the Southwest doing that. I've been all over the country already, getting out, supporting people to really do their best and get elected. I think one of the issues we have as the party is that not enough people of marginalized backgrounds are actually coming forward to step up to be in those roles. And I think we need to really work on that. I think we need to have these conversations with these people one-on-one as a group and, on a national scale, to try and show that, anyone can represent, anyone can be a councillor, an MP, you know, a candidate in something. And I think it's really important that us as the Green Party, as a party that's meant to be inclusive, supports that. And I will definitely be supporting that, having those conversations one-on-one as groups, as the deputy, to try and encourage more people to stand. And then when they do stand, really get out there on the door, throw the weight of the party behind them to get people elected. Because at the end of the day, that's what we need to do. If we don't have councillors, we struggle to get MPs. And if we don't have the candidates for those councillors, then we're not going to win the councillors. So I'm really, really supportive of getting as many people possible of all backgrounds looking to stand in those roles and then get elected.
Thanks, Thomas. Chas.
Yeah, well, like Thomas, obviously would support getting people in all communities across the whole spectrum of society involved in the Green Party, and particularly LGBTQI plus Greens of colour, and reaching out to them, actively reaching out to that community and finding out what the obstacles are for any of those groups. You know, why don't they want to be representatives? What is it that's holding them back, or what do they feel about the party that's holding them back? And generally discuss that issue. I think the second part of the question about bigotries, I kind of read that as more of a societal issue rather than an internal one. And that's generally what our Green Party policies stand to address. So I support our policies.
Thanks, Chas. Rachel.
Yeah, so I guess I see this, there's a kind of internal and an external thing. And really it's all about understanding each other and actually whether literally or metaphorically sitting down with each other and hearing each other's stories. So my background's in the arts, and one of the things I absolutely love about the arts of all kinds is that you get to walk around in someone else's shoes for a while. You get to somehow take part in their life experience through whether it's the film or the book or even the, you know, it could be a K-Tempest gig or whatever. You get to step inside someone else's shoes and see the world through their eyes. And as you do that, you expand yourself, and, you know, your heart grows a bit and your understanding for people in our society grows. And that is absolutely vital in politics. And certainly when I worked in community arts in Hackney, and there was a mission to bring different communities together through the arts, it was spending time with each community and finding out what worked for that community and what the specific issues were. So there's that kind of approach that's woven through it. I can imagine that for queer community from global South communities, that actually it's in global majority, that actually there are really specifically different challenges, and there's really specifically different experiences of coming from certain cultures, coming from different backgrounds. I imagine this is within this group that we're talking about, the diversity is phenomenal. And it would be really wonderful to be able to hear some of those stories and understand better, to be able to facilitate the telling of those stories, should those members want to. And part of the reason to do that is because ultimately we're about getting into political power, because we're about changing narratives in our society, and we're about changing laws and changing policies. And those laws and those policies will be more compassionate and will be more inclusive if we actually understand the lived experience of more people in specific ways. So that's why I'm interested in helping people tell their stories, all kinds of different ways to do that. Doesn't have to be creative at all, you know, and ultimately I think that's vital at every level of the party and in our society, and always, but particularly now, as hate is rising and as frankly fascism is on the rise. This is exactly the kind of work that we need to be doing.
Thanks, Rachel. Annie.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so we need an intersectional approach to everything, and it needs to be an inclusive approach to everything. There's a massive move, and it has been historical, but increasingly lately, to be divisive with different marginalised groups. We've seen it on social media in the last couple of weeks with Martin and his response or not response to the pledges. It's being exploited, and it is often exploited, that people of colour are assumed to not be inclusive. You know, there's a lot of institutional racism and Islamophobia in particular, when it comes to LGBTQI plus inclusion. I'm not immune to that internally, definitely not. So we've got a lot of good special interest groups, which are also liberation groups, but they're technically special interest groups, and we need to strengthen the links between them so that we're working together, so that we can't be pitched against each other. And those divisions or ideas that you can be a member of one community but not the other. That's something I would seek to do. And there's some very clear practical things that we can do as well, is that not all of our special interest groups are operating equitably. Some of them are slightly more resourced. Disability Greens are another example of, through the very nature of being disabled, less energy and less ability to be functional, and the party as a whole should be supporting that. The same with Greens of Colour. It would be good to see the party giving actual admin support, or more admin support, or maybe even financial support to some of the special interest groups that are having a more of an inequitable struggle to engage equally to other liberation groups. And that's a decision that can be made on GPEx. And as deputy, we get a vote on GPEx, and also power of voice to advocate for that as well as coming and actually actively engaging with members of those special interest groups. But there are some very real, very practical things that a deputy leader could do as a member of GPEx to advocate for better, more equitable, more inclusive, and more intersectional approaches to our special interest groups, or liberation groups, as we like to call them.
Thanks, Amy. Frank.
Thank you. For those of you that have heard me talk before, you probably expect that I'm going to frame this through an elections point of view. And I think that the way that I break this down is into sort of two sections. And I think the first thing we have to do is to represent our communities better. And as deputy leader, I think there's a real onus when in the media that I've got to be able to talk well about our communities, to stand up for social justice and climate justice, to be able to confidently say that we support trans rights, to be able to talk on behalf of our communities that are marginalised, and do so in a way that is convincing and compelling to the public. And I want to use my platform through social media, when I'm travelling around the country supporting local activists, to make sure that I'm empowering the voices of our campaigners across the country. And I think that this is where we have a real opportunity to actually shift the public discourse, is to get people elected who aren't traditionally represented in our local council chambers, in local government and in parliament. We need to empower people to do that. It's so very, very difficult for people that aren't, and you can tell this by looking at any council across the country, people that aren't retired pensioners, to be able to enter our halls of power. And we need to make sure that we shake that up a little bit. As a young Green like myself, or those that I've worked on the campaigns of as a campaign organizer, people of colour, Global Majority Greens, Greens of Colour, people like Hamer Yellow Brigada that I helped to elect, Tracy Drew, a Green campaigner with a disability who needs support with her campaigning. How do we tackle these problems, and are we doing it on the ground? And as deputy leader, I want to make sure that our party is inclusive, it is anti-racist. Our party is making sure our politics of intersectionality, which we're so proud of publicly, is actually embedded in our internal processes, and making sure that that happens.
Thanks. And Alex.
Thank you. So to address the point about bigotries as a result of intersectionality to start with, I mean, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the idea of radical candor, demonstrating that we care deeply, but also challenge directly. So I think anywhere we're encountering that bigotry, it's important to challenge it there and then straight away, and talk to the person to understand where that's coming from, because it can be from misunderstandings or wrong perceptions, and we can address those things. I think Mothin talked really strongly about somebody who came out the door and was giving him abuse, and he talked to that person and dealt with that, and that's something we can all practice. And I'm always inspired by councillors Karen Lewing and Hannah Cooper on Worcester City Council in the Green Group. They're always extremely good at challenging directly people who are saying things that are bigoted. In terms of what we do to reach out to support LGBTIQA plus Greens of Colour, it goes back to the things I've talked about before about I'm would be very keen to reach out and speak to people and say what are your barriers, and then work to break those down, because it is vital that we properly represent the society and the people we are trying to represent. And my style of leadership, as again I've talked about before, is one of a servant leader. So if you've got a problem, I want people across the entire party to be confident that they can contact me and I will help them solve their problem. Because I'm not here to tell people what to do or direct anything or be in a command and control. I'm here to be the party's representative in the leadership. So if anybody has any problems with that, please do reach out, and I would absolutely help you solve those problems.
That's great. Thanks, Alex. And thanks everyone for your answers to that question. That's the end of that question.
Yeah, cool. So one of the things we might want to just do, because we've got 10 minutes left and we want to try and see if we can get a good deal of questions in, we're going to try and see if we can do something a little bit more rapid fire. So try and keep your answers incredibly short, if possible. I know that a lot of answers are quite nuanced, but we'll start with Tris, if you would like to unmute and ask your question. Not sure we can hear you, Tris. I will pass over to Misha. I think Misha's put in the chat. Would you? I think this is a good question to ask in the context of obviously Scotland being shut down with regards to trying to change the law on trans rights. Would you support having a referendum on Scottish and Welsh independence and/or on a British Confederation by treaty? I'll start with Rachel.
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
Yes, sorry. Misha, your Green Party, would you support having a referendum on Scottish and Welsh independence and/or on the British Confederation by treaty? I guess this is in context of Scotland being shut down over their attempts to do the gender recognition reform bill.
It is a general referendum for Scottish and Welsh independence. Yeah, I would support that.
Alex? Oh, sorry.
So I was going to be a little less concise. So yes, if that's what the people of Wales and Scotland want, then I would absolutely support it as a proud Welshman. I'd love to see them being independent, but it's not for me standing in England to say what they should do or not.
Yeah, cool. I've noticed that Annie and Ash have mentioned in chat that it's a yes from them, so I will skip them out unless they want to talk. Frank?
Yes, I would support that. And I think a good first step we can do is to make sure we get our first Green member of the Senate elected. And that's one of my priorities as deputy leader, to make sure that we enter Welsh Parliament.
Cool. Thomas?
They are their own countries. They should be sovereign. And I do believe that if the people of the countries, Scotland and Wales, would like that, then absolutely should, because I think the UK Parliament's holding them back at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, I noticed you had your hand up there. Sorry, Annie. Do you want to mention something?
Yes, so Ash and I have just said yes to reversing Wes Streeting's ban on puberty blockers rather than, but also yes to Scottish and Welsh. And also I think it is our actual policy. So yes all round, still yes.
Yeah, cool. I'll go to Ash because I didn't see the actual context.
Yeah, it's a yes from me.
Cool. Who else haven't I called upon? Chas?
Yes, with the proviso that there needs to be a proper kind of lead up to any referendum, because we've seen referenda before where there's just been really poor preparation and not enough really kind of pointed discussion to to give people a chance to understand what the issues are.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Would you like to pick a question, Chris? You are on mute.
And so was I. Apologies, everyone. We've made it an hour and a half without too much of that, so that's good. Yeah, sure. Tris, did you manage to solve any problems about being able to speak?
I did, yeah.
Go ahead, ask your question, please.
My question is, there is currently a lot of messaging around the overdiagnosis of things like autism and ADHD, which are quite highly prevalent in queer communities. So what is the kind of view on overdiagnosis, and what, if anything, needs to be done about it?
Fantastic, thanks for the question. Quick fire answers as far as people can, please, to that not obviously quick fire type question. Rachel.
I don't think there's a problem with. I totally disagree with the overdiagnosing narrative. I think that neurodiversity is fabulous, and I think that has many superpowers of different kinds. But I also just think the point is that we're understanding the brain now in different ways, and so it's just adding a new level of understanding. And how completely brilliant that this lens enables us to meet people's needs better, to navigate relationships better, to look after ourselves better. I'm just like, just a fabulous bit of progress.
Thanks, Chas.
Yeah, I'm also not aware of overdiagnosis. I'll go with yeah, with the great answer by Rachel, actually.
Thanks, Alex.
No, there's not overdiagnosis. As my 9-year-old is currently going through an autism assessment. I absolutely agree with the idea that there are different brains that learn in different ways, and we're all better if learning is customized to suit people as they need to learn.
Thank you, Ash.
I have a healthcare background. I don't recognize overdiagnosis as a problem. In fact, I think every time we make a new step change in that, there is a lag. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was put through elaborate humiliation rituals by my teachers when I was about 6, 7 years old because of a lack of social awareness. I think we have to get there over time. I don't recognize overdiagnosis as a problem.
Thanks, Annie.
Yeah, I'm autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, also Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which has a massive overlap with other neurodiversities. It's not an overdiagnosis, it's an underdiagnosis, particularly for people who've got a uterus, because believe me, menopause kicks it all into massive overdrive, which is horrendous. Now, I was first suggested that I was autistic at the age of 11, and my parents, due to, it was, 80s, 90s, didn't progress that because of the negative ideas around neurodiversity, particularly in the 80s and 90s. It took me 33 years. I was 44 years old when I was diagnosed. That was like 3/4 of my life later. It's not an over-diagnosis. It's finally people have it in awareness and are seeking that help that they've been denied for their entire lives. So it's something that we should embrace and push back on this very ableist and disableist way of looking at something that a significant population experience. And my dad always used to go, but isn't that everybody? No, Dad, it's not, because it's hereditary. Got news for you.
Thanks, Annie. Frank?
Yeah, very quickly, just to echo what's already been said, that this is an underdiagnosis and that this is an issue, which unfortunately people of the LGBTIQA plus community have not had access to the care that they've needed, and often not being given the diagnosis that they were looking for. And so I think it's really important that we make sure that this happens now and going forward, and that we don't treat it and call it as an overdiagnosis and make it a bigger problem than it needs to be. This is about people getting the care that they need.
Thanks, Frank. And Thomas?
Overdiagnosis is being used as a scapegoat, to be honest. It's what it is that we have severe underfunding in our schools and our healthcare system to actually support people with a mind that, does things differently sometimes. I have ADHD and it drives me up the wall, and I didn't get support for that at school. And I very much see it as that, overdiagnosis it's not a thing. It's been made up by people trying to justify the lack of support.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Thomas. We've landed right on the button of time, so I don't think we're going to be able to ask any more questions. So apologies, Salem.
I am aware that candidates might have closing statements if they want to quickly approach them. I know that we have a 10-minute sort of break before we were to go into, so we could do closing statements quickly, I think. So yeah, let's do that. Frank, your closing statement.
Thank you. First of all, it's just been wonderful to be able to come along and to engage with the Liberation Group. And we've had a lot of hustings, and it's been great to be able to come and speak to people about the issues that matter most to them. I thank as well the LGBTIQA Greens for the pledges that they've done and for engaging with us throughout this process. I just want to finish by saying that this election you have a choice, and you can choose somebody who has the campaign's experience that we need to take the party to the next level, somebody who has a large social media platform and can cut through, and somebody who understands that our politics is intersectional and that we need to be united in our fight against the reform members of parliament and the rise of their narrative. We have to reclaim that, and we need to offer an alternative, and a hopeful one, fast. And I hope that together we can do that. Thank you.
Cool. Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, given some of the questions that we've been asked today, it really shows how, as a society, we seem to be taking a step backwards. And that isn't just out of nowhere, that is out of the systemic kind of underfunding of public services, those third spaces, those community groups, as for community to come together and for, millionaires, oligarchies, everyone to kind of start to divide and conquer normal working class people. So I think that now is the pivotal time in which the Green Party needs to stand up against that. We need to be supportive and we need to be representative of working class people. Otherwise, these issues are going to continue to get worse. And we need to make sure that whoever we elect has the ability to storytell, has the ability to communicate effectively with the general public so that we can all come together to battle this horrific capitalist society that is driving us all apart and putting us in worse conditions. And to me, yeah, I'm so thank you for having me tonight, and it's been amazing to actually have a discussion space for some of these questions.
Cool, thanks for that, Thomas. Next up is Alex.
Thank you. So thank you for all the great questions. They've been challenging, but I think really important things to talk about. And thank you to Chris and Melissa for hosting this evening. And I hope the rest of your evening hosting goes smoothly as well. So I think to riff on something I said yesterday, I think we come as the Green Party with a radical proposition. Not only can we save ourselves from the climate emergency, but we can do it by making everyone's lives better. We can lower bills, we can have safe, warm homes that people can actually afford to live in, and we don't have to marginalise groups in our society to do that. We only win if we all win. And if you've liked what I've said this evening, please do rank Alex first from the 1st of August.
Cool, thanks, Alex. Next up is Rachel.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris and Melissa, and everybody for being so welcoming. And I felt really at home here tonight, and that's how everyone should feel in this party all the time. And that would be a priority for me, that it felt like home for all of us. I keep thinking of the Audre Lorde quote that I love, and it's my sort of Facebook banner thing, which is that I am not free until every woman is free, even though her shackles be very different from my own. And I often think about that. But I also just want to say that if we truly want to fight the far right, with Reform rising at the pace that they are, and with the ridiculous mainstream media prominence that they have, you really need a leadership team who will take these messages, take this hope, take this fearless refusal of far right narratives, and with the ability to change them, to turn that around. You need a leadership team that will take that to the highest level, to the biggest platforms. We need to think huge for this party. I don't think we've even begun to tap our potential, even begun to really tell our story in a way that resonates with the widest possible group of people, or just more than a group, just an expansive, massive groups of people. And that's the journey I'm really excited to take us on. So this is about making big change, and this is about our future and about our children and their children. So I'm here for it. Vote for me, and I look forward to serving all of you.
Thanks for that, Rachel. Next up is Ash.
With this leadership election, you have got a choice to make. For the last 10 years, we have had platitudes over action when it comes to the queer community in the party. I think it's time for us to turn a corner and to back a leadership team that puts action first and doesn't align themselves with just empty platitudes. You should ask yourself, what history do your candidates have? Is it action or is it platitudes? I've spent my 15 years in the party championing the queer community, championing trans people, raising up my queer siblings across the party. I've suffered horrendous abuse for it. I've had a brick thrown through my window for it. I have walked the walk. I am talking the talk. This is not just platitudes from me. You have a great opportunity here to have a pair of working class, proudly queer trans candidates. If you want it, I would really encourage you to take that opportunity.
Thank you, Ash. Next up is Annie.
Thanks, Ash, as well. Yeah, I have a huge amount of experience representing the Green Party, and as Ash has just alluded to, so many of the questions, all of the questions tonight really get to the nub of the challenges that we face as a party, but also as a left-wing, inclusive, intersectional party. The only approach and solution to the climate emergency and the social emergency is an inclusive, intersectional one. And that is something that I live and breathe. I've demonstrated time and time again over my time in the party that I am unafraid to stand up for what is right. In every situation, I always do what is right, even when it's scary, even when it has personal impact, and what is right for our party and what's right for marginalised demographics. I bodily put myself in the way of marginalised communities when we had riots in Bristol, and we've unfortunately had quite a few. For a left-wing city, we've had quite a lot of far-right pushback in our city, and every single time myself and my fellow ward colleague Sibs are there on the front line protecting every marginalised demographic, because this fight is intersectional and we have to be intersectional and inclusive in our approach to it and our response. And representation is really important. When I stood in Bristol East, it's a really working class, marginalised, high Muslim population, but a huge amount of people with a refugee background as well. And we came second in that, the highest second that we had in the entire country. And part of that was, it was because of the work that we've been doing as a Green Party. And part of that was the way in which I can connect with those communities as well. And it's really important that we have a leadership that break through those preconceptions of what the Green Party is, of being white and middle class and straight and just the same old politics that we've always had. The Green Party isn't that, and we need representation in our leadership that demonstrates through the visual representation, lived representation of we do politics differently and we are represented differently. And that's why I'd love it if you voted for myself and other, such as Ash, trans people as your top choices, because it will be a hard fought balloting in the way in which our voting works. So as many diverse candidates as you can rank high in your voting choices is really important, because it is an uphill struggle even within our party. So thank you very much, and thanks for doing this hustings, because you've got a long slog tonight as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Annie. And finally, Chas.
Thanks very much. Thanks for organising the hustings. I've learned a lot over the course of the last hour and a half. The reason why I joined the Green Party was because it's the only party that sees all issues as interconnected: climate, liberation movements. You've got it all in one big place. And that is the big place that I want to see the Green Party continue to be, the home for all communities. And I think that the leadership team needs to be able to connect with everyone and it needs to be able to advocate for all groups in our society. And that's why I'm putting myself forward in the first place. So thank you very much for listening.
Cool. Thanks to all of the candidates for coming along today and answering our questions. What we're going to now do is going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to come back at 5 to 8. Then we're going to have 20-minute hustings for our campaigns and elections coordinator candidates. We'll have breakout rooms ready, and when we return, we'll get those sorted. And then, yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. So let's have that little break.